bag, a rifle, or a saber for the first time, or a 5-year veteran of a world champion color guard, her expectation is always the same: excellence. It's only her method and approach that will change to fit the needs of each student. In fact, Pete says, I have never seen a teacher that can adjust to the abilities of students with such ease and proficiency. Then Denise Bonfiglio, who was here last year, maybe she's here this evening as well, said of TJ, our paths are similar. We are educators, we are managers, we are coordinators, we are mentors, and we are technicians. More importantly, Denise says, we are women that have made a significant difference in the life of young adults. Shirley Doherty said, let's look at the math. TJ has delivered consistent, near-perfect performance for 31 seasons with the Blue Devils. That alone, Shirley says, is remarkable. And during those 31 seasons, the Blue Devils have earned 18 Best Color Guard titles, along with 12 championships. But the measurement that probably matters most to TJ is that she has achieved this by providing a growth-focused, positive, and educational program from which hundreds of her students have emerged ready to step into positions of leadership and responsibility. So said Shirley, Denise, and Pete. And we have our video. welcome TJ to the DCL Hall of Fame.
All right, I'm a little verklempt. Seeing pictures of my family. Unfortunately, my brother and sister-in-law couldn't be here tonight because he's going through a health condition, but my friends and drum corps supporters and Blue Devil people are over there to make me feel like I've got the safety net. Going to talk a little bit tonight, more as a personal remembrance of the road I experienced in drum corps, more than a kind of a Blue Devil resume. But first, and I'm going to hope that the phone reading is not a problem here. And the glasses down the nose. First, I would like to thank DCI and the Hall of Fame members for this recognition, and especially like to thank Pete Emmons, Shirley Doherty, I don't know if she's here, and Denise Fonfiglio over at the table for their very kind letters of support. Pete has become my neighbor and friend. It was Shirley's shoes I tried to fill when I first started teaching the A Corps, and Denise and I did have somewhat parallel drum corps family lives from Revere to California. I'd also like to congratulate Bruno and Paul Rennick, and I think it's quite cool that this year's inductees are all working instructors. We're all still in the activity. And sort of a note of pride, I do want to mention that tonight is the first rehearsal block I've missed in like 4 years. It wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. So, I was born into a drum corps family. My father and his brother started in the Sacred Heart Crusaders from Malden, Massachusetts. That turned into the Princeman Senior Corps, and he marched there for a number of years. Many years later, my dad and some of his friends came back from the service and started some local corps. It was pretty common in Massachusetts in those days. He and some family members started the St. Rose Scarlet Lancers from Chelsea, Mass. And by the way, that's the corps that Chick Corea marched in, which I only found out a few years ago. But this was the background to my early years. My grandfather was a quartermaster. Oh, the Boston came out. My grandfather was a quartermaster and volunteer, so a shako and a saber were my early toys. Most aunts and uncles marched there, and some met and married. My godfather was in uniform at my christening, and the corps performed at my Holy Communion. There was no escape. There really wasn't. I knew my second grade teacher from the color guard and often got in trouble for calling her by her first name. My uncle was the manager and my father the brass instructor, and everything in my family centered around the activity. Later, my father taught the Saugus Socialites all-girl corps, and he got me into the corps as a 5-year-old mascot. A number of the pictures are from that era. And that was where I did the twist to Crazy Rhythm. It was my official dancing debut. About the same time, my mother enrolled me in dance classes and 2 of my brothers in an all-boy corps. When my mother got tired of driving us around all the time, she told me I had to choose one activity. I was in for the ride at that point, so that was an easy decision to stay in drum corps. Around 11, my father made me join the horn line, so I'd have rehearsal the same nights as him, and he wouldn't be driving me all over the place. I played third soprano and eventually lead, but wasn't all that excited about it. One rehearsal, my father wanted to see who knew their music. I panicked a little, knowing I wasn't prepared, and he knew too. He called on me first to make the point. There was no nepotism there. It was get tough and get going. When the Socialites hired a whole new staff, my parents had my brothers and I join the IC Reveries, where my dad's senior corps friend taught. A bunch of cousins joined there too. The senior Reveries were notorious for their sit-down protest at the 1967 VFW Nationals, an interesting drum corps factoid in history. The church sponsor wasn't happy about the sit-down, and the older group left and became the Lancers, as Denise father took the corps and started them. We joined the younger local corps, where I was one of 3 girls in the horn line, and I'm amazed even remembering this, but I wore dresses and skirts to rehearsal, and anyone who knows me knows how absurd that is. A couple years later, I took a shot at auditioning for drum agent, and I had that job for 5 years. Little brothers and sisters in that group really aimed to make our own success, because we wanted eventually to compete with the Lancers. It was pretty ambitious, but it was a passion. I lived in Lynn, Mass, close to Manning Bowl, the site of the World Open. In 1971, the Reveries prepped for our B-class prelims by rehearsing all day for a whole week. My mother thought that was completely nuts, way too many hours. The World Open prompted controversy that year when the larger corps directors, already upset with the private sponsor, judging issues, and a last-minute parade requirement, refused to perform unless their complaints were addressed. This was a hint of what would lead to what was called the Combine, and then later DCI. The Lancers won what we later called DCI 71 over the strongest corps in the country, and a few of our members were recruited. More would go later. After DCI and a shift to national touring, our local group didn't have the resources or staff to keep up. In fall of '75, many left for the Lancers as the rest of us struggled to stay together. A few months later, I experienced my first merger, and it wasn't pretty. So I quit at the end of the season to focus on school. It was hard to leave my friends, but I thought for sure I was done with drum corps. Lots of local corps and some well-known ones folded in the early DCI era. Some tried merging to survive, but most didn't last. But a series of 3 mergers involving 5 groups would eventually produce the North Star in 1976, and I was drawn back. They had a bit of a rough start too, but there were enough determined people that something viable did emerge. Fun fact, I won the contest to name the corps. Kind of an interesting thought. I suggested it to represent the fact that the 5 corps were from the North Shore and their logos were a bird, an angel, a dreamer, and a cloud. And because I thought Blue Rock was the coolest corps on the planet and had the coolest name, so I wanted it to sound like that. I never imagined it would fly, but they accepted it, so that's my little minor line on my resume. By this time, I was in the rifle line and loved being part of a section again, and guards didn't really have technique programs then. Time was largely spent doing a million spins, then learning the show, and cleaning was pretty much trial and error. As a newer rifle, I had a lot of questions, but there was even disagreement about the way to start a spin. Coming from the horn line, I thought there could be a better way to define and measure what the color guard did, and that would come later, as still a member when I was asked to do that technique stuff. The North Star was seeing encouraging results until, on our way home from the World Open, to the World Open from Ohio, our equipment truck exploded in fire. We sat in our bosses watching helplessly, and we lost everything. We competed in prelims the next day in t-shirts and jeans, but that emotional experience solidified our group. We threw together uniforms, borrowed equipment, and pushed through the rest of the season, placing just outside of the top 25, and in that era that meant just short of an associate membership. The next summer, we pushed to make finals and missed by a few spots, but because members had so much experience, most of them 10 years or more, we weathered the rough season, and we were obsessed with getting into finals in '78. In my age-out year, I could not imagine marching 17 years and not marching finals. I was absolutely obsessed, as all my friends were, and nothing was getting in the way, and making finals in 10th that year was a godsend. I don't know what I would have done if we hadn't made it. I had started teaching before aging out, but didn't enjoy it as much as performing. Many friends were still marching, so I felt left out over the next couple of years. In 1980, I got a call from Jay Murphy to teach St. Joe's Winter Guard. We'd met several years earlier when he taught Boston's rifle line, who seemed to be exploring something really different than everyone else. We often vented about the craziness in each of our corps, wanting more sanity, for real. When he called me to teach, I was looking to move on from pageantry, but that group was pretty adorable and talented, so my experience teaching with Jay began there. After Guard Show in early 1982, Jay said I should move to California. He actually wrote a pro and con list on a napkin. I have it still somewhere, and that was the impetus. I was like, okay, I'll go. Why not? I wanted to move to California for school and to break the drum corps habit, and after teaching Boston in 1982, going on their notorious European tour, I made the move. At first, I dabbled with the BDB Winter Guard and worked to save money for school. In '85, I told Jay I'd like to teach the A Corps full-time so I could get my degree, then cut the drum corps cord. He said he didn't believe me. But I was serious and started teaching the A Corps in '86. I had first seen the Blue Devils in 1974 when the Reveries were on after them in Butler, Pennsylvania, the old days when you would stand across the back and watch the corps while they were performing. In '76, my friends and I were stunned, actually, watching them march through the narrow Manning Bowl gate in their new uniforms with such presence and professionalism. so it was surreal joining their staff and seeing drum corps as a profession. Teaching the Blue Devils has been quite different than my grassroots East Coast drum corps experience, where survival was often a concern and crisis was frequent. The Blue Devils are structured to make things work and to make excellence a habit. Being part of such an exceptional staff, working with such talented students, and being involved with so many beautiful shows exceeds the values of titles and trophies. Teaching here for over 30 years was never planned, but I've relished the freedom, the friendships, travel, trust, commitment, and creativity that are part of this organization, and I'm glad my unplanned road has led here. I particularly want to say thank you to Scott Chandler for taking the initial leap of faith in 1990 with some of us from the previous Guard staff. That was an act of generosity that changed the course of my drum corps career and life, and working with you is always stimulating. I want to thank Jay Murphy for his major influence, even if unintended, in my living in California and getting to teach the Blue Devils. I've now lived about 4 years of my life on a Blue Devils staff bus. Thank you. I don't know what other course my life might have taken, but I'm pretty happy that Plan B turned out to be Plan BD. And thank you to the rest of the current Guard staff, all over here at my table, Robbie Jacobson, David Ziem, and Tracy Higgins for their awesome work ethic and their high standards, and for putting up with my pushing, complaining, and periodic crazy. I'll admit it. Again, thank you to DCI and the Hall of Fame members for this honor. I'm happy to be part of this notable group, and also glad to help further represent the females in our activity. And a final thank you to my family for supporting me in this activity all these years. My father said, do what you do 110%. My mother said, do what you love. I hope they're both happy, and I wish she could have been here. So one last thing, I'd like to close by mentioning something that happened earlier this summer in Santa Barbara. During our rehearsal, our ensemble rehearsal, a man and his 2 dogs came inside and watched rehearsal for an hour or so, and then watched the final run-through. As we left the stadium, he just happened to be behind me and said, what is this? What is this all about? What are you people doing? And I briefly said, well, we're this touring marching band thing, and we're heading for our nationals in a few weeks. He said it was amazing, he'd never seen anything like it. And then he had kind of an outburst. He said, that's unbelievable. That's world peace right there. And it stunned me for a second. I thought, oh my God, I guess we are helping to fight the darkness. And such a stunning phrase, that's world peace right there. That was a direct quote. And I would like to think that in these dark times for our culture, that's what every one of us in this room is trying to do. Thank you.
TJ from the DCI Hall of Fame. And at this time, I'd like to invite all members of the DCI Hall of Fame to come to the front for a glass of champagne. And our 3 newest inductees, why don't you join me on the platform for the toast. Please.
I do, Dave. Get my walker. Let me get my walker.
So a toast to all of you, to each of you, to everybody.
Oh, one sec. Get up there. Get up there. Front.
Photo? There it is. Yay!
Go in the crowd. Get up there.
So we invite you to stay to visit, mingle, talk, revisit. Thank you all very much.
Wasn't that the best speech ever?
Awesome.
Oh no, I'll take a red. Red.
See ya. sitting back there again.